Welcome to the Daring CEO Co-op podcast, where we celebrate entrepreneurs who dare to build a business on their own terms. I'm your host, Denise Klein, and each episode, we're going to dive into stories, talents, and passions of those who are redefining success and making their mark by sharing their gifts with the world. Join us for inspiration, real talk, and actionable insights as we embrace the power of daring to do business your way. All right, here we go. All right. I love spending time with new folks on the Daring CEO Co-op podcast. And for those of you who don't know me, my name is Denise Klein. I'm the host. And our guest today is someone that I think is very special, because one of the things I want to highlight is us being daring enough to live our lives and build our businesses the way we want. And Liza Lomax is here with us today, and she does exactly that. Now, Liza, I'm going to give you a second here to introduce her. I call you a holistic success coach? Is that?
Yes.
Okay.
Yes.
So we'll get into that and exactly what that is. Liza, thank you for coming and spending some time with us.
Thank you for having me. I'm excited to be here.
Well, I think that one of the things that I really embrace as an entrepreneur is trying to do things my own way. You know, I lived for very many years. I'm 50 this year, and I started my business 2.5 years ago, and making that shift and trying to do things my way. I'm sick of doing things, trying to fit myself into somebody else's square peg in a round hole kind of thing.
Right. Yes.
And entrepreneurship has allowed me to do that. And it takes a little bravery to do things
Yes, it
differently, and it takes practice. And I just think you have embodied so much of that. So would you tell us, how did you become your very own daring CEO in your own business?
Oh my goodness. Wow. Where do I start? So, I mean, I had the same thoughts. It's like I put myself in a box. I put myself in the back burner. I did what everyone else told me to do. What I like to call sheep. I was a sheep. I just went with the flock, went with the flow, And so I'm going to go way back. So my dad is from another country.
Mhm.
And I grew up going back and forth as a child. And when I was 14, I had this desire and I totally manifested this. I had this dream that I wanted to go where I wanted to go. I wanted to see what I wanted to see, and I want to be where I wanted to be, because I consciously chose to make that happen. Because my dad traveled all over the world, speaks multiple languages, travels all over the place. And I'd get postcards from him from all over the world. And I'm like, I want to go there. I want to see that. I want to be that. I'm like, how can I make that happen? But of course, as time goes on, we grow up, we're conditioned to go with the flow, to do this and to be part of the system and like do all the things that everybody tells you to do. And I got to a point in my life where I was like, this is bullshit. Like, I cannot stand this any longer. I cannot be caged. I cannot be tied down. This is not where I want to be. And so I thought, okay, well, how do I make this happen? When I've so many years, I have just done the things, and I'm like, I still traveled, not as often as I wanted to, but I still traveled. So but it wasn't, I hadn't made it happen quite the way I wanted to yet.
Yeah.
And so it took me a few years. And my dad was kind of like, so my dad left the corporate world at 35 and never looked back. Now, when I say corporate world, I mean, my dad's an entrepreneur. He's had his hands dipped in so many different things. I swear we share the same thing. Like, I mean, obviously we share the same DNA, but it's like, it's in my DNA. He's grown companies, started companies, sold companies off. He was a motivational speaker. He did so many things and had his hands dipped in producing and directing and writing. And like I did 15 years of theater and acting. I was acting from the age of 3 to 23. And so there's just so many things that were very similar. And yet we didn't even live together. Like he lived in another country. So I only saw him limited times growing up.
Yeah.
And so he left the corporate world at 35, never looked back. And he kept like, he's like, when I got, he's like, okay, you got to make this happen. It's the best thing that you can ever do for yourself. You have to just be you, be your authentic self, go where you want to go, see what you want to see, be where you want to be, because you're choosing to make that happen. And I was like, okay. Yeah, but it was always like but I'm like, I'm scared. What about the security? What about it? The stability? What about? It was like always like, oh, there's always something.
Always.
And then it was like, I got to 40. Now next year I'll be 50. So I know I don't look it, but I am. I have an adult child too. Most people are like, what? I'm like, yes, I have an adult child. By the time I was 40, I was like, this is it. Like, I have to make this shift. Like, I can't do this. I was doing my business. So I've been a coach for about 15 years. I was still doing my business, but I was still in the corporate world. I was still doing a little corporate here and a little this. I was still working for someone else.
Yeah.
Not all the time, but I was still dipping my toes in that pool. Yeah. And I didn't want to be in that pool anymore. I wanted to be in my own pool. Yeah. And so finally left the corporate world. It was like the scariest thing I ever did, but it was the most exhilarating, most exciting scare that I'd ever done in my entire life. And left the corporate world, decided enough is enough. I'm going to do this. I'm going to make it happen. And then, just make it happen. And then COVID hit, and like, we all know what happened after that. And so before that, prior to that, I had met my partner. Unfortunately, we're not together anymore, but we still are a part of each other's lives. And they had this dream of like living in another country. And I was like, I've always wanted to do that too. Like I always wanted to be closer to Denmark. I wanted to be closer to, so I'm a dual citizen. I have Danish citizenship, between here in the US here, and because I'm back in the US right now, and in Denmark. And so I wanted to be closer to my family, but not necessarily be in the backyard, just be in the general area. Really pretty much anywhere in Europe is pretty, easy to get to all the countries. Except for France. France is like Texas. It like takes forever to get through it. Or Florida. So, but anyways, it's just a hop, skip, and a jump. You take a train, you take a plane, it's very easy. And so I said, okay, let's make this happen. So how do we make this happen? How do we be this daring CEO? How do we be this, like the CEO of my, of your own life? Like, yes. I actually do a talk called Embracing Your Inner CEO. And I actually just did that this morning. I did that particular talk this morning. And I'm actually in October, I'm doing the same talk for a little well-known company called Microsoft. Just putting a little plug for myself in there.
You should.
Yes, that's huge. Anyways, so I, like, how do I become my own CEO? How do I make this happen? How do I make this shift happen? And how do I do it? And with, having a business, how do you travel at the same time? How do you become essentially this nomad and the self-employed nomad that travels the world? Well, I made it happen. Yeah. And we made the trek over there. And in the last 4.5 years, I've lived in 11 countries. And it's been amazing and phenomenal. And yes, I have all my ducks in a row. You've got to make sure you have things taken care of. You got to make sure that everything is, people don't realize like there's a lot that goes into it. And every country, logistics wise, there's a lot of things that go into it. Each country has their own set of rules and regulations, how long can you be in the country? How long can you not? Are you're self-employed? If you make money in that country, do you have to claim it for their
Mhm.
country and the US? So there's a lot of, like a lot of countries do double taxation. So it's like you get taxed by that country and by the US if
Gotcha.
you're still a US citizen. And but then there's other countries that only take a certain percentage. So it's really one of those things you got to do your homework if it's a lifestyle that you want to do,
Mhm.
because it's totally doable. I
Mhm.
didn't think that I can make it happen, and I made it happen.
Totally made it.
I totally made it happen, and you can make it happen. Like people always worry, you're like, oh, well, like where's your home, or where do you go? And I'm like, home is where I'm at. Like
Yeah.
I my life is based on, like, I'd rather spend my money and I'd rather invest my money
Mhm.
in experiences,
Sure.
in adventures,
Things. Yeah.
in traveling. And so I make travel a priority. That is my thing. I'm like, I don't need a car. I don't need a house. I
Mhm.
don't need things. I don't need stuff.
Mhm.
I spent, the last 15 years really in the mindset of being a minimalist
Mhm.
and learning how to, hey, if I just have a backpack on my back and go, let's go. Like it's like I know exactly what I need, where I need, what I'm going, like it's like everything that I have, everything that I own is in a suitcase, and that's okay. Like I'm totally fine with that because I get to have adventures and I get to have experiences, and it
Yeah.
could experience culture and the ambiance and the energy and the people, and it makes me so happy, and I light up so much to be
Mhm.
able to get to travel and do these
Well,
things
you had that calling
and make
since
it.
you were a kid, to
Yes.
I love just a couple of things. So, having your dad as an example, right? Not
Hmm.
just
Hmm.
traveling and having those experiences, the entrepreneurship, there had to be a little piece of it, like, because it's almost like it's modeled for you to a certain degree. Like, okay, that's something I can do. For a lot of us, neither one of my parents, well, we didn't travel a lot, but neither one of my parents were entrepreneurs either. So for folks, I know that you do lots of coaching, and one of the things to get to the point where you're like, oh, I can do this thing. It doesn't have to be being a nomad. It can be you know leaving corporate and doing a job, or working for yourself, or any number of things.
Yes.
Getting to
Yes.
that point where you're like, oh, this might be possible for me. Like that, it kind of has to start with, oh, wait a minute. I really could do this thing. And
Yes.
how do you, I know that you work with people on this kind of thing, so they are reaching
Mhm.
the success that they want. How do you take that little kernel and help them explore and decide what success looks like for them?
Well, exactly. So, and I said the same exact thing in my when I spoke this morning in a networking group, and I said, "You define what success means. Like, it's not what the dictionary says.
Right.
The dictionary has conditioned us to believe that we all have to believe that's what success is. Now, for me personally, growing up, because I didn't live with my dad full time and my parents got divorced, I did not have the best childhood,
Mhm.
not at all. There was no love. It was very physically, emotionally abusive,
Mm.
mentally, emotionally, physically, even spiritually.
Mhm.
And so I was actually, and people aren't usually consciously told this, but
Mhm.
I was actually told that if I don't do X, Y, and Z, I would never be successful.
Mm.
If I didn't do this over here, I'm not going to be successful. And
Mhm.
I'm not good enough.
Mm.
Like that was told to me.
Mhm.
You're not good enough for this.
Yeah.
And yeah, that's got to do a number to your psyche.
Mhm. It really
And so,
And that's one of the reasons
yeah.
I wanted to have you on, and I mean to cut you off there, but one of the things that in entrepreneurship, one thing I didn't know about entrepreneurship was how much entrepreneurship is a self-improvement journey. Like everything,
Yes.
it comes, you're like, oh, I have this insecurity from childhood, which just sounds crazy, but it's just true. And so you end up kind of facing a lot of those things, whether you're an entrepreneur or you're just trying to create a life that you're in, you kind of have to bump up against those things. So think it's very vulnerable for you to, and I hate to say admit, but publicly say, I've had this, traumatic experience in childhood. I have been through similar, and it does affect you in so many ways as an adult.
Mhm. Yes. Yeah. I mean, I was the this is the exact realm of people that I work with. I was a perfectionist. I was an overachiever. I
Mhm,
was a people pleaser. I was a doormat.
mhm,
I took care of everyone else but myself and tried to make everything else around me successful
mhm.
except for myself.
Yeah, because
And
if all the other plates are spinning, you're okay, right?
right, which is bullshit. That's not
It's
how it
bullshit.
works.
No, it's not.
It's not how it works. Not
No.
how it works. So those are the people I help are the overachievers, the perfectionists, the people pleasers, which ironically are often womenpreneurs,
Mhm,
solopreneurs,
mhm.
entrepreneurs, business coaches, even spiritual coaches.
Yeah.
And if they're not prioritizing themselves, they are not going to be successful in all areas of their life.
Yeah.
They're not going to be. And in our businesses or business
Mhm.
would not survive without us.
Thank you. That this is exactly because when now we are coming at this from different sides, right? Because you are more spiritual and um, more emotional with the work that
Holistic,
you do,
yes. Yep.
holistic, right? Um, Not that I'm not those things, but in my business, I do systems, I do these practical things,
Yes.
but the goal is still the same. I want to,
Mhm.
for myself and for my clients, create a business you love that you
Yes.
can run while you're still exploring these other parts of yourself, where you're still taking care of
Mhm.
yourself. Because frankly, part of the reason I decided to start a business myself is because I didn't listen to myself for the first 50, 40 something years.
Right, right. Mhm.
And when you're describing it, perfectionist, right? and
Yes.
and overachievers. And I think a lot of times we become overachievers because we're trying to prove we're good enough.
Yeah.
I'm like, oh,
Yep.
I'll
Mhm.
get 4 degrees. How about that? And you know what? 4 degrees, and I still didn't feel like I was, qualified to run my own business, which is just
Yeah.
insanity. And
It
that's
is.
just that mental piece. So when you are talking to people and helping them, these overachievers, these perfectionists, just like me, what are some of the key mind shifts and practical strategies that you use to help them make changes so they can, you know, take care of themselves?
Yeah. Yeah. Well, and just to kind of reiterate, it's like, yes, our businesses wouldn't thrive without us. So the first step is to taking care of ourselves, making ourselves a priority, first and foremost, taking care of what we need to do so that we thrive. Because if we're thriving, then
Hmm.
everything in our life is successful. And again, you define, whoever's watching this, whoever's listening to this, you define the parameters of what success means to you,
Yes.
not the Webster dictionary or whatever dictionary you're looking for, or whatever Wikipedia says or whatever Google says. No, 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 no. It's you.
Hmm.
It's all about you. It's not selfish, it's self-preservation.
Thank you.
It's
Well,
all about you.
and we're in this very social media world, and so you see all these people,
Yes.
in all the advertising and all the social media posts, and that might work for them, but
Yes.
we don't have to be like, oh, I have to do that thing because they're
Mhm.
doing that. We can really
Mhm.
create a
Mhm.
business and run it
Mhm.
exactly the way
We're
you want.
all unique. We're all
Mhm.
individually unique in our own way. And what resonates for one person isn't going to resonate for another.
Exactly.
What one person does doesn't mean that you have to do it. But we've been conditioned to believe that we've got to do the things and
Mhm.
we've got to follow in line, or we've got to stand in the queue or whatever. We got to do all the things. And so when I'm coaching people, it's all about baby steps, because we've been brainwashed to think we got to go, go, go and do, and we got to hustle, 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 hustle. And what does that do? That creates stress, anxiety, which raises cortisol levels in our bodies, which then creates fat in our bodies, which, like a lot of women come to me, they say they want to lose weight. Like,
Mhm.
okay. It also creates a lot of overwhelm, and the most overused word, the B word, burnout.
Mhm.
So again, our businesses would not thrive or even exist without us. And these bodies that we are in
Mhm.
are our home. It's the only home we have.
Yeah.
So take care of your home and do what's necessary. And so when I'm working with people, it's very slow increments. It's baby steps,
Mhm.
taking one little piece at a time, like the story, the tortoise and the hare.
Mhm.
I'm sure people know what that story is. It's like the
Mhm.
hare rushed to the finish line and didn't get anything, and the tortoise took its time and like did the things and knew that if I followed this way, or I went this way, or I chose this way, it's
Mhm.
going to get me to where I need to be. And
Mhm.
so really taking your time and being mindful
Mhm.
about what you not only put in your body, what you fuel your body with, but what are you fueling your mind with? What are
Mhm.
you watching? What are you listening?
Mhm.
What are you doing on a daily basis? And so I take all aspects of life in general and get them to a place where they're truly thriving and they're truly like, they can look at themselves in the mirror, because I tell people the short version of what I do is help women look at themselves naked in the mirror and love what they see.
That
And
is,
how many times do you
I
get into
know.
the mirror?
And I think for most people, that is a very tall order. They can't imagine doing that. Mhm.
Right, right. Because it all starts with you. It all starts with who you see, how you see yourself. And if you're putting yourself priority, if you're making yourself the most important person in your life, you're taking care of your body, you're taking care of your home, everything else in your life is going to thrive, including this amazing business that you have.
Yeah. It feels
Yes.
like I think for a lot of people, that they kind of feel like they have to choose. Like I can either I have ADHD. I was just diagnosed in the last year, and I'm an all or nothing thinker. Like I am all in or I'm all out. And so I find it difficult to find balance. It's hard for me to focus on my business and focus on my health and focus on my mental health and focus on there's a lot of things to focus on. And so, how do you help people like me to take those baby steps and not let everything else fall apart while they're on this exploration to
Hmm.
love themselves
Well,
more?
I have my own transformational story as to why I do what I do. I'm like, I've been 100 pounds and I've been over 300 pounds.
Mhm.
And it never mattered where I was on the scale,
Mhm.
no pun intended.
Mhm.
I was always unhappy with who I saw in the mirror.
Yeah.
I always just did not like who I saw in the mirror. And I was really good at taking care of other people, taking care of other things. I mean, very successful in so many areas of my life. But because I was conditioned to believe that if I didn't do this, I
Mhm.
wasn't truly successful,
Mhm.
I didn't see any of those things. And so I kept striving and doing the best of the best of the best. And I have to be the best, and I have to be the go-getter, and I have to do it this way, and
Same.
be the lead, exactly, be the leader, and be the shining light, and be the center of attention, and be the all the
Yeah,
things, and
and
da, da, da,
be
da, da.
positive and have your hair look nice. All the things.
Right,
I'm
right.
sorry. I just
And
can't do
so
that
it's
anymore. It's so
no, no.
exhausting. It's just ridiculous.
It is ridiculous. It is ridiculous, but it's we you have to make a decision, and you have to make a conscious decision to change. because it all starts with you. And so it's like, if you have to get to the point in your life where it's like, it's no ifs, ands, or buts, like this has to change. Something has to shift. I have to start taking care of myself. Some people usually either hit a rock bottom, or they have a health scare, or something
Mhm.
wakes them up
Mhm.
and is like, oh my gosh, like I have to do something.
Yeah.
And especially people that are just constantly putting themselves in their business and their business and their business and their business. And then
Mhm.
it's like, well, then everything else is faltering behind them. Everything else is failing behind them,
Yeah.
including themselves.
Right.
And again, it goes back to that. It's like, okay, if you're not taking care of yourself, if mama ain't happy, nobody's happy.
Hmm. Well, and
You don't have to be a mama to make that, to understand that statement. It's like, if
no,
you're
it's
not
true.
happy, nobody else in your space is happy. Nothing in your space is happy.
No, and like you said, like, when you feel like you're home, right? And I love
Mhm.
that analogy. You can be anywhere because you're home. You have that security. Yeah,
Yes.
I have so much more of that now than I used to, because I did exactly what you said. Several years
Yeah.
ago, when I was still teaching, really, really struggling with my health, really struggling with my weight, really struggling with my mental health, probably first and foremost, that led to the other things, and pouring so much of myself into my students, into my family, into my work. And I was just empty. It didn't matter how much I slept. I was always
Yeah.
tired. Like, there was no way, I was never recharging. So you can't pour from an empty cup. And
No,
once I
no.
finally was like, okay, I need to do something, I went to therapy, and I did therapy
Mhm.
for a number of
Mhm.
years. And that helped a lot. And then I started taking care of my health slowly. I had weight loss surgery. I was over 300 pounds, and, lost well over 100 pounds. And that was huge. I found a mindset coach that, ugh, woke up my brain in a
Yes.
way I had never experienced before. But
Mhm.
it was like those little steps, those little
Mhm.
things that I did to start putting myself first. And I think, I don't, maybe it's different in Europe, but I know for, here in the US, so much of the time, we as women just give and give and give. And, when I think about,
Yes.
my mother and my aunts and my grandmother, like, they just worked all the
Yeah.
time. Like, it was just,
Mhm.
they're just constantly giving. There was no model for self-care. I
Mm-mm.
just don't think
Mm-mm.
we've done a great job. Now, I think it's interesting now because business is different than it used to be, right? And
Yes.
I think there's plenty of us that are 50-ish. We're like, we're sick of this shit and we're going to do it our own way. you know?
Yep. Yep.
Yeah. So I think that there's lots of hope for creating our lives, and we can do it. It just
Yes.
takes that commitment and small steps, and,
Yeah.
support.
Yeah.
It's always
Yeah.
wonderful to have too.
Ex exactly. And knowing that we don't have to do this alone.
Yeah.
And because we've been thinking, again, we've been brainwashed to think that we have to do it all ourselves,
Yeah.
like, or that nobody's like us.
Yeah.
Like, I'm unique. Yes, you are
Of
unique.
course.
Very similar stories,
Mhm.
especially if you're in the Gen X category.
Mhm.
Yes, like we were raised very differently.
Yep. Rub some dirt
Raised
on it, it'll be fine.
ourselves.
That was,
Yeah,
that
don't cry, I'll give you something
I'll
to
give you
cry
something to cry about. Oh,
or oh, you got to eat everything on your plate because there's starving children somewhere
yeah,
in the
yeah,
world. I
exactly.
mean, there was so many things that were told to us, and like, and even like you too, I'm like, I didn't do weight loss surgery. I did it the old fashioned way. I did diet and exercise, and I even lost 105 pounds, but
Mhm.
I still looked in the mirror and hated who I saw.
Yeah.
So I knew it had nothing to do with the weight. And like I
Mhm.
said before earlier, most women, I do primarily work with women, but I do work with men as well. I work with everybody, all walks of life,
Mhm.
all genders, all types,
Mhm.
anybody and everybody. But predominantly women come to me and they say, I want to lose weight.
Yeah.
It's like, okay, yeah, okay, we'll lose weight. Really, when it comes down to it, it has nothing to do with the weight.
Amazing.
The weight is just a manifestation of what they're not wanting to deal with underneath the surface.
Mhm.
Same with emotional eating. Emotional eating is just a symptom of something that somebody doesn't want to have a heart to heart, face to face conversation about.
Yeah. True story.
Yeah.
Yeah. And I think
True
for
story.
me, like I went through, like I said, I did therapy. And once I'd gone
Mhm.
through therapy and finally got to a place, I was like, okay, I'm ready. And that's when I was like, okay, I had tried to lose weight a million different times before. And so I opted for weight loss surgery after lots and lots of soul searching, but I believed it was the best thing for me. And it really has been. But I did the mental work
Yes. You
first
have to do the
because
mental
I
work.
was so
Yes.
scared. And not that I don't still have recurrences. I'm still not at the weight I'd like to be. But it again, it's a process. And yeah, but it's got so little to do with the actual
Mhm.
weight. And I remember one of the conversations you and I had, the idea of looking at yourself in the mirror naked and being like, I like what I see. I can actually say that now. And not every
Yes.
single day,
Yes.
not every single day. I still have days. But, I have an appreciation for who I am as a person, for the things that I've been
Mhm.
through, for my perspective. And it feels weird to be like yourself, to appreciate yourself. That's not
Yes.
something
Yeah.
I've ever done because I was like, okay,
Mhm.
this whole idea of doing, right? This we've got to do. Well, my
Mhm.
identity was tied up in doing. Like my value
Yes.
are the things I do. Because our
Yeah.
parents, I said, my grandmother, my aunts, my mom, so much was about the things they did for us. So acts of
Yes.
service is something that's still very close to my heart. But yeah, we get so much of our identity from doing things. The
Yes.
mindset coach that I mentioned earlier, her name's Stacey McFarland, and I love her, and I'm sure I'll have her on at some point. One of the things she talks about is doing less and being more. Now, the first time she said that, I was
Yes.
like, I don't understand what that means. So she really did have to explain that to me, and it's a contradiction contrary to almost anything that we've been taught.
Yes. Yes. Yeah. My partner, well, soon to be ex-partner, wrote a book called Achieve More by Saying Yes to Less. Yeah, I'm plugging their book too because it's a really good book
Mhm,
about how to do just that. How your therapist just told you, what your coach just told you. Like, how do you achieve more by saying yes to less?
mhm,
Because we're so used to saying yes, 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 yes. But do you realize that no is a complete sentence? And saying no actually is an act of self-care. It's an
mhm.
act of self-love.
Yeah.
And when you don't say no to yourself or no to others, or no, when you say yes, when you really mean no,
Mhm.
you are going against your boundaries. You're
Yes.
going against your belief system,
Yeah.
and it's a violation to
It
yourself.
is. It is.
So, no is a complete sentence, and it's okay to say no. It's okay to walk away. It's okay to do the things necessary to prioritize your own well-being.
Yeah, and it's one of those things like I am absolutely a believer in this, but it took me a long time to get to the point where like no, doing this, taking care of myself is not selfish. It is what's going to
No.
allow me to show up more for others because
Yes,
that is
yes,
my heart, right? I'm here to create, teach, and serve. That is my mission. But I cannot do
yes.
those things if, well, number one, if I'm not here because I'm not taking care of myself, or if I mentally and emotionally and physically don't feel like I can show up. And so
Mhm,
I
mhm,
accidentally kind of figured some of this out on my own when I first started. Knew I was going to
mm,
finally pivot to my own business. I'm an entrepreneur, 25 years in the making. It took me a long time to finally get the gumption to do it. But it started with I worked for myself first. And so I worked for
mm,
myself. I got up early and I worked for myself, and then I did my day job. And then when I finally shifted to working just for myself in my business, now I work for myself first and then I work for my clients. And then now
mhm.
I've actually shifted where I'm taking care of myself. Then I work for myself
Yes,
and then I work for
yes,
my clients. And
yes.
every day isn't perfect, but
No.
that balance has worked for me. But
Mhm.
I love that you said, you're taking it one step at a time, those baby steps. We
Yes,
don't have to up
yes.
And every
No,
start with
no.
little things and make
Right.
that
Yeah.
shift over time.
Yeah.
We'll
Yeah.
get you,
Yeah.
we'll get you there.
Yeah. Yeah. One of the talks that I do is embracing your inner CEO. And that was the talk that I did this morning. And I talk about like a lot of the things that you just mentioned. I talk about it in that, it's like it's making no comparisons where we can't pour from an empty cup, like creating these things for yourself, like creating a stress relief toolkit,
Mhm,
like have tools in your toolbox per se that you can go to
mhm,
when you start to feel the overwhelm, the stress, the anxiety, the burnout, all those kinds of things.
mhm,
One of the things that I really, really stress is that, we all have to-do lists. All of us write a to-do list, or we create a to-do list, or we have one in our heads. We always have a to-do list, and we put stuff that we need to do on our to-do list. No, 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 no. We are not a to-do list. No,
mhm,
we are not on our to-do list. We
mhm.
are the to-do list.
Yeah.
So remind yourself, whoever's listening, that you are your own to-do list. Never put yourself on your to-do list,
Mhm,
because that's something that's completely different. You are. So putting yourself first and foremost
mhm.
in the morning is the most important, impactful thing that you can ever do for yourself. Wake up every single morning, think of things that you're grateful for. You can rattle them off as many times as you want. Something I do, to the pillow under my head, to the blanket on my bed. I mean, like anything and everything. Gratitude.
Yeah.
Journaling is the most it's the most impactful utilized thing that you can do, like
Mhm,
action that you can do, because we have to get it out. We're so stuck in our heads, especially if we're like, we have ADHD, or we have, some sort of like,
mhm.
attention deficit thing. It's like we have to get it out because we've got so
Yeah.
much going on in our brains.
Yep.
We have a million tabs open in our heads. It's
All
like
the
we need to get it out. Yes.
yes.
So getting it out, getting it out, getting it out. Like there's things that you can do, and then getting out in nature, like getting outside. Our bodies are not meant to sit behind a desk,
All day,
sit
every
first of
day.
all for a long day, yes,
Mm,
and sit behind a desk all day, every day, not being outdoors, not breathing the natural air that's outside. So even 5-10 minutes, we all have that, to make a
yes.
commitment to yourself.
Mhm,
Be that part of your toolkit, or be that part of your daily routine. Your part of your prioritizing yourself is to get out in nature for at least 5-10 minutes.
yeah.
Everybody has that.
Yeah.
Do some deep breathing, some mindfulness. Like
Mhm.
all these things are not woo-woo things.
No.
There are like
They are
things that
actual practical. So I refer to them as
practical
practical.
tools.
Yeah, but they're like practical magic though, because really
They
when
are
you
practical
use them,
magic, yes.
they're practical, but they really do move. So I'm going to talk about a little woo stuff because
Okay.
I know we have folks, and I am woo curious. I'll put it that way. How about that? So I know that you are also a medium and an intuitive healer.
Mm-hmm.
Oh, how
Mm-hmm.
do you integrate like energy and healing and spiritual tools and things into your practice and supporting your clients?
It's it's part of who I am. It's totally me. It all encompasses me. And a quick little backstory. By the time when I was 5, I realized I was a medium. I didn't know what that was at the time, but I knew that I had abilities that a lot of people didn't have.
Mhm,
But I didn't think anything of it, and most people thought I had imaginary friends.
mhm,
And then it escalated to like, I'm able to talk to animals, and I'm able to talk to anything that has energy. And
mhm,
I just had a knowing of what things were going on.
mhm.
And I just had a knowing of and it's not mind reading. It's more of like the energy, like
I
what
think
they're,
the word keeps coming to me is that intuitive.
yes. Yeah.
Yeah.
So intuitiveness, empath,
Mhm,
I felt things, I experienced things. even smelled things. I'm like, I heard things. It's like I've got, all the clairs. So anybody who's very familiar with the clairs, I have all of them.
Mhm.
And at a very young age, I had all these gifts. And then by the time I was 14, I started having very profound, um, uh, really profound and impactful dreams and visions. And they were
Mhm.
so intense
Mhm.
that I turned to the one person who I thought I could trust at the time, which was my mother,
Mhm.
which was a big mistake. And she basically tried to have me have an exorcism because I was the devil, or I was
Oh
evil,
my
and all the things that I
goodness.
was telling were evil and they were bad, and I needed to shut it off.
Yeah.
And so I spent a big chunk of my teenage years being a very depressed,
Mm.
very melancholy child.
Yeah.
And it wasn't until I was older that what I like to call, I divorced her from my life. I cut those ties and I was like, okay, I'm going to go get the healing that I need. I'm
Yeah.
going to go do the things. I've done therapy, I've done the healing, I've worked with shamans, I've worked with coaches, I've worked with healers, all the things.
Mhm.
And I knew that those were gifts. When I was younger, I thought it was a curse, but I knew that they were a gift and I had to utilize them in some way. And
Yeah.
so they've always been a part of me. They've always been a part of my life. And so anytime I put my hands on anything, anybody, anyone, animals, they're just like, they soak it up and they feel it.
Yeah.
And so for a long time, it's like I specifically focused on spiritual gifts and helping people develop their intuitive gifts and how to bring them forth and how to to have to have these gifts, to be able to utilize them.
Mhm.
And did a lot of healing, did a lot of things. I had my own healing space in my home. And then I wanted to do more. And I started telling my story and people are like, well, why aren't you doing this kind of work? This is really impactful. And I
Mhm.
was like, oh, okay. And so everything just kind of fell into place.
Yeah.
And so now now I do use them separately. If
Mhm.
somebody wants a reading or wants, like I just did a animal reading for a really good friend of mine not too long ago, because she knows I do animal communication. So, like I'll do everything separate, but everything is now just incorporated in
Into
one
your
because,
holistic,
yes,
right? Going back to
yes,
the
the
holistic
whole
word, the
holistic.
whole,
Yes,
yeah.
yes. Because when people come to me and they say they want to lose weight, it's like, okay, well, we'll lose weight. And in order to lose the physical or drop, because I don't like to use the word lose, because what happens when we say we lost
Mhm.
something? We
Yeah.
find it again. We always tend
Yeah.
to find it and find more and then more and more and more. So I say dropping or releasing, letting go. I use those terms a lot.
Sure.
So dropping the weight, the physical weight, you have to work and dropping the emotional, the mental, the spiritual, and the psychological baggage that one holds on to. Once you can release all that, the physical weight actually drops off.
Yeah.
That's the magic pill. That's the magic potion that we all want. That's where the magic is.
Yeah.
We actually physically drop the weight. Now, this has happened to me personally a couple times,
Mhm.
actually just recently too.
Mhm.
I actually dropped some physical weight because I released some emotional stuff that was still, it was just a deeper level because
Yeah.
we're onions. There's a
Where
layer,
all the
a
layers,
layer, and a layer.
they're very deep.
And I was like, I thought I healed this already. Oh no, the universe is telling me it's just another layer that I
Mhm.
have to heal, which is good because then that gives me the knowledge and the know-how to help my clients that are
Yes.
going to be going through the same thing.
And I think
That's
that
how it
is
works.
so I think that's very powerful for people to realize, for those of us out here that are on a healing journey, when we reach out to someone like you that has so many gifts and so much experience, but you're a real human being and you're still living it every day. It's a continual journey. And here's the thing is, I think it's so important for people to know, and I wish I kind of realized this, like there is no done. Like this just is
No, there's no
this
done.
process is what life is, and we
Mm-hmm.
can
Mm-hmm.
embrace it. And so like when those, oh, there's that lesson again. Oh, there's that
Mm-hmm.
lesson again. Okay.
Yep.
I love that analogy. We're just peeling those layers away.
Yeah, it's an adventure. I mean, that's how I look at it now is like, okay, what adventure am I going to take today? But
Mhm,
I'm very present in the moment now
mhm.
because our past is the past. It no longer exists anymore. There is no reason to ruminate or resonate in it at all. It
Yeah.
doesn't do anything for us. It keeps us in dis-ease, which
Mm,
eventually turns to disease, but it does so many things, does nothing for us.
mhm.
Thinking about the future is the same thing. It does nothing for us. Our future continuously changes second by second based on the choices and decisions that we make.
Yeah.
So our future is never really like full, like this is what my future is going to look like. We don't know that because it could change. If you're in your car and you decide to take a right versus a left one day, it
Yep.
shifts, it
It
changes.
does.
So, being present in the moment where you are right now is the best thing that you can do for yourself. Every moment of every second of every day being present.
Yeah.
Like how can I be present? And so I've gotten to I've gotten to the habit of saying I wake up every morning. Yes, I do my gratitudes, but I wake up and I say, "Okay, how am I going to take care of my human today?"
Ooh, that's a nice way.
Because we're spiritual beings having a human experience
I
and
love
these bodies are organic. It
mhm.
is our home. They are organic. They are slowly fading. This isn't us. This is just a
Yeah.
body. This is just a vessel.
Mhm.
We we go on. We move on. We go on.
Yeah.
So how can I take care of my human today? Just today
I
and
love
focus on
that. I've
that.
never heard it put that
Yes.
way, but yeah.
Yeah, I actually got the concept from, and I can't remember what his name is, but he wrote a book recently, and he was on the Drew Barrymore show. Really great guy, but he kind of go and find him. I can't remember his name, but he's on the Drew Barrymore show, and he talks about like taking care of your human. But
Mhm.
he explains it wonderfully to a T.
Mhm.
But you still kind of grasp it, by me saying
Mhm.
it's like, okay, well, we're spiritual beings having a human experience. Okay, how am I going to take care of this human body today? How am I going to take care of my human?
Yeah.
And then yeah, and then go from there. But just being present in the moment
Yeah.
because we're so stuck in the past, we're always thinking about the future. It's like, why? You're
Mhm.
just creating a lot of chaos in your life that doesn't need to be created.
No, and that's one of the things. So, a big part of my own mental health journey has been around depression and anxiety, which now I know is part of what ADHD is.
Yes.
Um, and so when I'm feeling particularly anxious about something, maybe I'm an entrepreneur, so I worry about money sometimes. That happens. But if you can just stop for a moment and say, you know what, but right here, right now, I'm fine, I'm safe, I'm
Yes.
whole. You
Yes.
know, and
Yes.
just breathe into that because it's when you
Mhm.
borrow that stress from tomorrow or repeat the mistakes from the past and we
Mhm.
bring all of that junk into our moment, this moment, and that's when we really get into the anxiety. And for me, it's very, very hard for my to slow my brain down enough to recognize
Mhm.
that. So
Mhm.
it's definitely a practice. And you were talking about, what are we reading and listening to? And I'm rereading now
Mhm.
A New Earth by Eckhart Tolle and The Power of Now. I'm going to
Oh,
do that one next.
yes.
Because, and I've read those books before, but I like rereading because I'm in a different place now. I get something different out of it. And
Mhm.
one of the lessons that Eckhart Tolle, and I don't remember if it was Power Now or A New Earth, which one it was, but he was specifically kind of talking about his own experience when he realized he's like, am I the thinker or am I the thought? And even just to take the moment and say, wait a minute, just that, like, okay, I am not my thoughts. I am not
Mm-mm.
this
Mm-mm.
being. Then
Mm-mm.
that opened me up in a way that, yeah, it's
Yeah.
just remarkable. And so,
Yeah.
yeah,
Yeah.
one of my favorites currently is going back into
Yes. Oh, I love
that
those. I love those. Yeah.
and into all
Yes.
of that. So
Yeah.
I could talk for you forever.
Just to, exactly. And to just to go back to like the whole, like, how do I incorporate my modalities? I just incorporate them in there. And like anytime I have a session with somebody, or anytime I'm talking to somebody, I am constantly like, there's constant energy healing going out. Like
Yeah.
anything that I do, all my courses, all my ebooks, I have a Etsy store out there, all my meditations, I embed energy healing into it. I embed all stuff into it so that when you feel it, when you hear it, you are experiencing it
Yeah.
on so many other levels.
Yeah.
And that's just what I do. So it's like when a person's coaching with me or they have a session with me, it's constant. It's just constantly coming out.
Yeah.
Because I'm a natural
Yeah.
born
You
healer.
can't.
I'm a guide. I'm like, my mission in this world is to show people how to love and how to transform through love. That
Yeah.
is my mission. I am a guide to
Mhm.
do that for people.
Well,
How can you love yourself? Yes.
and frankly, that is the most important. You were going to be my very first podcast guest for this exact reason. We had scheduling, we had tech issues. We really,
Yes, we did.
but this is because I really do think, if we're going to build a business, we're going to build a life. We only get to do this once, first, as far as we know, right? And so while we're here, we might as well do the things that make us happy, connect with ourselves,
Yes.
learn about ourselves, and love
Yes.
ourselves, because you can't pour from an empty cup.
No.
Liza, thank you so much for
No.
coming and spending time
Yeah.
with me today. And I'm going to make sure everybody gets all of your contact information. So please connect with Liza, spend some time with her, do a one-on-one, get to know her. And it's just going to open you up to see, when you see what she's done with her life and how she supports her clients, you're going to be like, you know what? I think I could do a little more loving for myself too. So thank you again for coming and spending time with
Thank
us
you.
today.
Thank
I
you.
appreciate
Thank
it.
you. Yes, I appreciate you. Yes, thank you.
Thank you for joining us for this episode of the Daring CEO Co-op podcast. If you'd like to have more support and join our community, we'd love to have you. You can reach us by going to daringceo.com. There you're going to find a link for our free Facebook community. And if you'd like to be a podcast member, there will be a link for that as well. Thank you for spending this time with us. Now, go be daring.